So Allison Gill, we are so profoundly grateful that you are here on National Whistleblower Week. And we'd like to ask you, what advice would you give whistleblowers? What advice do you give to the whistleblowing world?
Oh, Jane, I've thought about this quite a lot since my days of whistleblowing of yore, when, as you know, because of my whistleblowing, I lost my job. And the advice that I would give to whistleblowers is, first of all, the right thing is never the wrong thing. And it's always so important to call out that fraud, waste, and abuse. We are the front line against fraud, waste, and abuse in our system and in the agencies that we work for. And so it's incredibly important that we do the right thing, because we are stewards of democracy. We are stewards of taxpayer dollars. And that's something we took an oath to do, a lot of us. And so I find that it's very important. And again, doing the right thing is never the wrong thing. But one bit of advice I would say is to reach out to your network, your group, your community, to make sure that you have a bit of a safety net underneath you. As we can and have seen, there are some bad actors in some agencies that can make it very difficult for us to speak that truth. And so I just can only recommend to reach out to your community, get the support that you need, and make sure that you're situated with that kind of, not just financial support, I'm not necessarily talking about that, but the emotional support that you will need when sometimes the agency might betray you.
Excellent, excellent advice, Allison. And of course, you've been there. You're a veteran of the whistleblowing world, and you're kind of a role model. What should people know about whistleblowers?
I feel like because of some of the attacks from within our own agencies that we face, and because of some of the disinformation that those agencies or bad actors can put out into the world, we can seem like bad guys. And so, I really think it's important to know that we aren't, and to keep getting that message out, that we are working for the people, that we do what we do for the people, to protect them. And so I think that is probably the number one issue that when I speak to other whistleblowers, that I find.
Are you speaking to several whistleblowers, Allison, or do you have a little community? I know your podcast is widely distributed. So do you have an active whistleblower community?
Yes, and that is something that I would also recommend folks do, is to reach out and find other whistleblowers, whether it's in your agency or not. But we have, chat rooms and Discords where we discuss things, or even, in some cases, somebody in that group will file a FOIA request and get paperwork, and that can be useful to other people in that group. And that support net is, I think, very, very valuable to know, first of all, that you're not alone, because they will gaslight you and try to make you think that you're crazy. And the best remedy for that, besides sunlight and truth and documents, is a group of people who've been through the same thing that you can talk to.
Thank you, Allison Gill. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Jane.
I am very honored today to have Fred Whitehurst. He is a legacy whistleblower. He's been in the arena for decades. This man is honored throughout the whistleblowing world. Fred, it is so nice to have you with us for Whistleblower Week. Welcome.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. So Fred, how can we help one another in the whistleblower world?
I think what happens when you're deciding whether you're going to come forward, whether you're going to follow your convictions, all the way, you're terrified. You've no idea what tomorrow is. You don't know whether you're going to be able to feed your family. You don't even know if you're going to go to prison. Some of us go to prison. You don't know those things. And I think by our willingness as whistleblowers to be there for people, I first met you, Jane, because you had, you were coming out there and you called me and said, what's next? And I've met a lot of whistleblowers that way. And first of all, knowing that whether you win or lose in the eyes of the world, you won. You had the courage. You saw something wrong, something simply anybody would recognize as wrong, and you didn't hide in a corner. You tried to change things from within. You didn't shoot your boss in the back, so, and it didn't work. And you realized that the system was flawed seriously. By our sharing our experiences and saying tomorrow, you're still going to be here. You're bigger than what you've been allowed to be where you're at. And you'll get a job. It's going to be rough, but most of the roughness is concerned about the unknown. By allowing people to see it isn't unknown. A lot of us have been through it. A lot of us are patriots. A lot of us are true to our convictions. And then you're one of us. So I think that's the way we can help. We can also help by family visits. I was visited just about, 2 or 3 weeks ago. A senior executive federal employee came down to Little Bethel to talk with me and brought his wife. We all got together for lunch, and it's good for the families to get together, to be able to talk to each other. To what is your experience with how did the kids take it? How did the wife or the husband take it? That kind of thing. What effect has this had? Is there a tomorrow? So I think, those are important things we need to do as whistleblowers. We need to support those of us that are brand new at it.
Wise words of advice. I don't think, Fred, I would have made it without your support and advice. And what words of support or advice would you give to other whistleblowers?
First of all, if you're raising an issue that you expect is going to cause issues, you need to find an attorney. You must find an attorney. You've got to find somebody. I'm an attorney, but I'm not a whistleblower attorney. I'm a criminal defense attorney. Okay. You must have somebody that has experience. And you have to be careful when you go out there finding attorneys. You need to, unlike what I did, I just luckily found the law firm of Cohen and Colapento, and with serendipity. Some whistleblowers go out and they find an attorney, and then they find the attorney's got all their money and nothing's happening. So you need to look into, okay, what is specifically an employment law attorney, but specifically a whistleblower attorney. You need to be very careful about how you go about the next step. The next step being, I see something wrong. I've talked to my bosses. My bosses have acted inappropriately. I'm required to report fraud, waste, and abuse to the corruption to the appropriate authority. Who is the appropriate authority? Those kinds of what's next really demands a law firm. And if you walk into a law firm and they want everything you've got, you need to say, well, thank you, and I'm looking around. I know the law firm that I was very lucky to find on the first go out, they put themselves in a lot of fiscal danger, if you will, by taking on a lawsuit against the president, the attorney general, the FBI director, the FBI, the US government, the US Department of Justice. That was a gargantuan type of thing that they just cited and didn't hesitate. And
No.
so you need a good law firm.
Yes.
You need to prepare your family.
Yes. Yes, you do. And what would you like to tell people about whistleblowers, Fred?
I think we're people that saw something that was wrong, went about responsibly trying to address it within our organizations, realized that the organization did not have the courage to fix it, to fix itself. In my situation, the organization admitted there were things wrong, which now amount to and are very well-known human rights violations committed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but didn't have the courage to come forward. So tomorrow, you're going to have a job. Tomorrow, you're going to have a future. Your kids are going to eat. If you've got children, you're going to pay for a mortgage. You're going to, because think of yourself what you are. You're somebody that has the courage to follow their conviction. You're smart. You're brave. You will move forward. And, you know, I'll tell you a story, a very quick story. I was here about a year and a half down in North Carolina when I got a headhunter call me up from, you know, somebody looking to hire me from Washington, D.C. area, Chevy Chase. And I left the FBI making about 105, 110,000 a year. I've been here 18 months when the headhunter called up and said, you know, we could start you out at 250,000 a year. And I thought, well, okay, sure. And I told her, I said, you know, I live in heaven and you live in hell. There's not enough money to get me go back there, but I appreciate very much your offer. And she laughed just like you laughed because, you know, people live in major metropolitan areas, know they're living in hell. And okay. And so we signed off, but there are jobs for you. There is a future. And it's an honorable future. It's not hiding behind, am I going to get my retirement check? Is somebody call me names? No, it's an honorable future.
Fred Whitehurst, you are a legend in the whistleblowing world. It's been an honor to know you for the last 2.5 decades. And it's just a pleasure to have you with us during National Whistleblower Week. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm so excited. From Africa, we have a critically important whistleblower in the state capture case. Good morning, Mosilo. How are you doing?
Good afternoon from South Africa.
Can you tell me how we can help one another in the whistleblower world?
So what would I encourage other whistleblowers to do? In South Africa, we don't have a legislation that is very strong. But what I did was talk to a lawyer, talk to a priest, and speak to a family. And then just understand what the legislation within your own country is, so that you cannot be litigated. And you have to know that whatever decision you make, you have to physically, psychologically, emotionally, and financially know that it's going to be a very bumpy ride. Because I think in this world, we've seen in various economies, various leaderships in history, that when you speak the truth, it's very unpopular. And just have a very strong support base so that you have someone to hold your hand throughout this journey. And I have to say that my journey was very difficult. I lost faith in humanity at one stage because everybody I turned to betrayed me. But now I have the wisdom to say, where do you go from here? So I would just say, just make sure that you have the support you need, and make sure that you are willing to make a few sacrifices for the love of company, for the love of country, and for the love of justice, truth, and humanity.
Wise words. Can you tell us what would you like to tell people about whistleblowers?
I think whistleblowers, an interesting antidote is that I had a a PhD candidate from the second best university in Africa. It's called the University of Johannesburg. And he wanted to do a thesis on whistleblowers. And so he interviewed me. And he wanted to know, what are the characteristics of a whistleblower? And I said, you know what? I don't think there's a characteristic. For me, I'm being a spiritual Christian. It was my spirituality that said, I cannot sit back and let injustice take place. How will history judge me? And how will I judge myself? And so I got the strength also from my upbringing. My mom was a very strong force in my life. I call her my moral compass. By the way, I'm also an author, Uncaptured. And in my acknowledgement, I call her my moral compass. And I decided that what would make her proud, for me to be a coward and do nothing, or for me to stand up for the truth. So that's you need that support, you need that inspiration. And it's a bumpy ride, it's an emotional ride. Others have come out, unfortunately, not alive. Others have lost livelihoods. I was unemployed for 2 years, but a few, I call them angels of mercy. They came through for me. And Jane, I'm sure you've read my book. My bond was a mortgage bond. I'm not sure what you guys call it in the US. I don't have any debt, so I own my house. And I'm now working, and I use some of my proceeds from my book Uncaptured. It's on Amazon, to also assist other whistleblowers that are not as fortunate as I am. So if you guys are avid readers, and also there's an audio, if you want to assist other people, because the road is bumpy and justice sometimes, there's a saying that it's quite ironic that it says that, is it no good deed goes unpunished.
Oh, isn't that the truth? And
That's the truth.
That's the truth. And you are an inspiration to other whistleblowers around the world. Thank you for joining us.
It's been a wonderful pleasure. And my last word, it's been an honor to serve. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Blake, we are so honored to have you here for Whistleblower Week. And I'd like to ask you, how can we help one another in the whistleblower world?
Well, thank you. It's a joy to be here. I always enjoy doing whatever I can to assist other whistleblowers and just for the cause of whistleblowing. I think it's important, and it seems simple. The very first thing that we need to do when a whistleblower comes forward is listen. A lot of times people hear the word whistleblower and they somewhat, don't pay attention to what the person has to say. But I think the first thing we need to do is just listen to them, listen to what they have to say, digest what they have to say, and then take action on whatever it is that they're telling us about. And then I think it's important that we work to protect all whistleblowers. Most people that are whistleblowing have paid a price. They didn't just, blurt something out and it made them a whistleblower. Most of the whistleblowers that come forward, by the time we hear what they had to say, they've paid a price. And if a person will pay a price to tell you something, we need to listen. We need to listen to what they say. We need to take action on what they say, and we need to work to protect them for the action that they've taken.
Very wise words of advice. What words of support would you give to other whistleblowers?
A lot of people will offer a whistleblower support, but the main thing I would tell them is trust your gut. Mm-hmm. You got to sleep at night. You got to trust your gut and your moral compass, what's leading you, and you got to stick to it. The other thing I would say is, there's a lot of legal settings that we do go through as whistleblowers. So the second thing I would say is trust your lawyer. If you chose a lawyer, listen to what they tell you and trust them and follow that advice. The other thing I would say is, if at all possible, follow the law. I think it's there to guide all of us. And if there are times when blowing the whistle requires you to break the law, but most of the time, it would be my advice that we try to stay within the law.
What would you like to tell people about whistleblowers?
I think what I'd like to tell people is, whistleblowers are just normal people. They're just people that were living their life like everybody else. Something came up that they just couldn't live and let live. They had to take a stand. So they're regular people. Most, if not all, gave something up to be a whistleblower. So it's important, what they're saying. And they didn't choose to be where they are. It's important that we listen to them. Coming from an investigative background, and you know this, Jane, it's important to look a lot of times at motivation. When a person had to sacrifice to tell you something, like I said earlier, we need to listen.
Well said, Blake. Well said. Thank you for joining us during National Whistleblower Week.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We are so honored to have Geoff Morris here with us today, Australian whistleblower. Geoff, welcome. It's so glad to have you here. I am so glad.
Thanks, Jane. It's great to be here.
Lovely. Geoff, can you tell us, how can we help one another in the whistleblower world?
Well, it's funny because I've been talking to a lot of whistleblowers in meeting them in the last week. It's been a real flurry of activity for me. And the thing that has really struck me is just how awful it is for people to go through this ordeal on their own and be isolated. And so we've formed a little network of whistleblowers here in Australia so we can support each other. And everybody who's going through the experience now keeps telling me how it's been literally, in some cases, a lifesaver for them. And I think that theme can be extended, that I think we can all draw strength from each other around the world. And it opens up a much bigger network than whistleblowers here in Australia. I mean, there's hundreds of whistleblowers in Australia, but of course there's a great many more around the world, and we all face the same challenges. And I think the biggest challenge is the consistent theme of corruption in our public and private institutions. And I think we in the developed world seem to, without exception, have these problems in the fabric of our society. And even people in the street, I think you can see the recent elections around the world. The people themselves know there's something wrong. There's this growing awareness, and whistleblowers, I think, have been at the forefront in highlighting this and bringing this change in public perception about. So I think it's a global problem. It needs a global movement. And of course, also we can benefit in so many practical ways from networking around the world. We in Australia have virtually no whistleblower protections at all, no system of compensation for whistleblowers. And in that respect, we seriously lag the United States. So to what extent we can use your experience or hold it up to our government to try and get some reform here, I mean, that's obviously going to be very helpful to whistleblowers in the future in Australia. So, I mean, I really think there's no end to the possibilities of what we can achieve if we all work together.
What words of support or advice would you give to other whistleblowers?
Well, again, I guess my advice is tailored to the Australian situation. And, you have to remember this against the backdrop of what I just said, that there is no meaningful whistleblower protection in this country. And there's no compensation for the loss of your career, which, as every whistleblower knows, is what happens. So in Australia, I mean, we've recently had, well, we're still going on, but the disgraceful spectacle of our own government prosecuting a number of whistleblowers. Strangely, it's just been announced that they've dropped one of these shameful prosecutions against a man who exposed our bugging of a friendly country for commercial gain. So his name was Bernard Collaery. It's quite a prominent case involving East Timor. They've announced they're dropping the prosecution, but there's nothing further from this new government on the investigation into the illegal acts that took place, the corruption that was involved, and indeed the corrupt prosecution of a whistleblower by the previous government. So unfortunately, it looks as if the intention is to close ranks and try and bury the whole issue. But against this backdrop of lack of protections and outright persecution of whistleblowers in Australia, and I speak to a lot of people and I give them this advice, that you can expect to lose your job, your career, your family, be diagnosed with PTSD before it's all over. And of course, most people in those circumstances choose quite rationally not to go ahead. But I am struck by the fact that there was one whistleblower who managed to remain anonymous. And he did that by sending his information direct to the media in an untraceable way. I don't know who he is. The journalist who did the story doesn't know who he is, but it brought down one of our major banks. So perhaps the lesson is, I guess you have to adapt how you act to your environment and the conditions you're in. In Australia, it seems to me that that is the safest way for a whistleblower to go about this, is to act anonymously. And the key there is to find a good journalist that you can give the information to, who will follow up and investigate and blow the whole scandal open. So I think that's a key takeout. Obviously, it's different elsewhere in the world where conditions are different. But in Australia, sadly, I'm drawn to the conclusion that for your own protection, really the safest course is just to act anonymously.
What would you like to tell people about whistleblowers?
Well, I think, again, this would be a common theme. People who are whistleblowers understand this, but people who've never been a whistleblower can't. But it is an horrific ordeal. It's a life-altering ordeal. It tests you to your limit and beyond. It will take you to breaking point. And no matter, you know, how well prepared you are mentally, and how experienced you are, or how tough you think you are, the challenges of being a whistleblower will basically pretty much break anybody. And you will be taken to that point. You will get to a point where you question whether you should just give up and walk away. It's what I, in my own case, called the whiteout moment. I was like a boxer face down on the canvas. I'd just been flattened. And this was just after my family had left home and I'd become aware of a death threat and the fact that the people at my former employer had decided that I wasn't to be told about the death threat, that the regulator was doing absolutely nothing with the information I'd given them. And, you know, literally I was lying there, it was all you could see is white. And the question is, well, do you get up and keep fighting, or do you just lie here and let them kick you to death? And it gets to that stage, and talk to a lot of whistleblowers who contemplated suicide. The toll, the emotional, the mental toll on you and your family is unbelievable. And in many ways, just surviving that whole process is an achievement in itself. And the saddest thing is that for many whistleblowers, they make that sacrifice, and particularly in this country, achieve nothing at all. The system shuts them down. The perpetrators can use the legal system in this country, in Australia, to bludgeon whistleblowers into submission. So, and in fact, in the last few weeks, I've actually met with and talked to people. In one case, a lady who exposed outright rancid corruption in a local council. She not only lost her job, but the council has dragged her through a court process, and she spent over $3 million on legal fees, has lost a home, has lost everything. And the authorities have dropped most of the corruption charges against the people that they brought charges based on her information, but then more often than not in this country, the authorities then drop the ball and nothing happens. There's, I guess, nothing more disheartening for a whistleblower than to find that all of your sacrifice has been for nothing. And sadly, that is all too common in this country. But I guess that's what I would say to people about whistleblowers is you act out of a sense of trying to do the right thing in your own integrity, and you pay a price for it. And it's very difficult, I think, for people who haven't gone through that process themselves to understand the magnitude of what's involved.
Thank you, Jeffrey Morris. You are a wise, wise man. We appreciate your time, your advice, and just your wisdom. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Joe.